All right. We are streaming.
Doing it live.
Yeah.
Hi, everyone. I'm Zoe.
I'm Nick.
And we are two curriculum developers here at Codecademy. And today we are going to be doing a live stream about our latest C# content, conditionals and methods.
Yeah, so to give you a little context on what's been going on with C# at Codecademy, we have just produced 4 modules, and they cover data types and variables, operators, how to read and write to the console, conditionals, and methods. So that's all out there if you want to take that. We're focusing on conditionals and methods that were released this week.
Yep.
And we're going to do one of the projects from those modules.
So the project that we're doing is called Architecture Arithmetic. And the idea behind it is that you get a blueprint and you break the blueprint into different primitive shapes like rectangles, circles, triangles, and then you create formulas for calculating the areas of each of those shapes. That may be familiar from math class, but don't worry, we also provide you with the formulas. And then you use methods to put those formulas into use.
Right. So the way it's going to work, we're going to be coding along, which you should be able to see behind us. And we're working on the Codecademy site. If you want to watch the video, that's in YouTube, and you can chat also in video, on YouTube. So go in there, introduce yourself. If you have any questions about C# or you want to share why you're here, we love to hear about that, and it can help us develop what's coming next. And what else? Yeah, we'll be asking questions. We want this to be an interactive process. We want this to help you and be useful to you, so let us know if you have questions. And the project exists also available to you in the links below the YouTube video. Absolutely. Yes.
So before we get started, just want to give a quick few shout outs to everyone who's here with us today. Thank you so much for joining us. It's been a little while since we've done a live stream because we've been releasing a lot of different content on Codecademy. Our skill paths just came out, so you should check them out. But this is the first time in a little while that we've released a real new set of lessons, a new set of projects. So it's awesome to see everyone here. Let's see, we've got Amo, Victor, Emma, Do or Die.
Wow, okay. Slayer Princess, I like
Slayer
that.
Princess. Hell yes.
Yeah. I should have thought of that.
That's a really good one.
That's all my gamer tags for the rest of time now.
Slayer Princess.
Yeah.
I don't know. Slayer Princess may fight you for that.
That's true.
It seemed like they've got that kind of
attitude. Yeah,
attitude.
they probably have it all over.
Absolutely. Lawrence, hello. Tetsu and Tim. Arturo, hello. Seeing some questions already in the group chat, which is awesome. So we'll be answering those as we go along. We also have the ever wonderful Alex Kuntz behind the screens. Can't see him, man behind the curtain. And he will also be responding to your comments in the chat under the Codecademy name. So cool. Hello, Monica. Spark School. What is Spark School?
I don't know.
That's awesome, though.
Yeah, if you can explain a little bit more, we'd love to hear why they sent you here, but also what you want to get out of it. There's a question from Tim. Is C# used for mobile app development? Yes. C# is really cool. It's like a really good investment in learning. I was talking to someone earlier today about like why learn C#? And why is it hard for some people to start? It is one of those languages that has like a high ramp up, and it's a high cost but high reward. For me, at least, in my experience. Yeah. There's a lot you need to learn to get good at C#, but once you do, it's a really powerful language. It works really well for large applications. There's a lot of jobs for it, and you can do pretty much anything.
Yeah, so not only can you do web development, but you can also make desktop applications, web applications,
mobile apps.
My favorite one to always shout out is you can make games and virtual reality applications using Unity and C#.
Yeah, Internet of Things.
Internet of Things.
Yeah.
It's one of my favorite technology phrases.
You can do Internet of Things with C#.
You can do Internet of Things with C#. So yes, we are developing C# on Mac or PC, came a question from FAJC. We are actually both using Macintoshes right now. You can develop C# on a Macintosh, on a PC. You can even do it on a Linux-based operating system now. All of that comes from, well, we're using the Visual Studio IDE, and there are different software downloads based off of your operating system. We actually included information on the C# course in an article about downloading Visual Studio for C# development. So all that information is there.
So I guess we're ready to get started with the project.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Let's talk about why we wanted to do this project on the live stream.
Yeah. So the project, we're going to run through the project, and then we're going to extend it by adding making it interactive, essentially. So this project is a good example of how to use methods. So methods and conditionals are something really important to all programming languages, but for conditionals, allows us to make decisions with our program. So it may do different behavior based on our input, for example. Methods are how you make your code reusable and organized and modular. So rather than having one huge page of code, there's one bug, you have to search through the whole thing. You can break it up into parts that make sense. So you come back to it later, you can say, like, I understand that this deals with one concept, this deals with another concept, and you can use those like building blocks.
Absolutely.
What else?
Some of the outcomes from this project, we're looking at a process that is very repetitive, having to calculate areas of, different floor plans. So one great thing about programming is you can write a program to automate different work that you have. So imagine that you actually were in a construction contracting business, and you're regularly calculating the amount of tiles, let's say, that you need to use for a house. And it would be great if you could write a program, something like this, that would say, okay, no matter what the size of the house is, I can break it up into these different shapes and put my numbers in, and then come out with the exact dollar amount that I would need to have in order to purchase my tiles. So what's cool about this is that in addition to automating repetitive work, we actually are going to show you how to turn this into a interactive console application. So it's not just a program that's going to print information to the console, but it's actually going to be a program that another user could make use of. So most of the time when we're interacting with technology, we don't see all the code behind it in the program. We're not just writing programs that we can run for ourselves. Usually there's some kind of user experience. So we're going to show you how you can start adding user experience to your projects.
Yeah. And if you're wondering if this is the right live stream for you, if you're just beginning C# or don't know it, this is still a great chance to talk to us about it, but also learn what it can do. If you're already familiar with C#, we're going to be doing some refactoring and thinking about how we write our code. So that's going to be useful to anyone who already has experience on how to write better code. Yeah.
Pretty much it. We're going to assume that you have a basic knowledge of data types, whether that's in C# or maybe another programming language. So again, Booleans, integers, strings, and also basic operators. So, addition, subtraction. I don't think we were doing anything with logical operators, are we, in this one?
No, we're not.
Okay, so pretty straightforward, but again, we're going to be walking you through it. So if you have any questions, please put them in the chat. I see Alex has already been answering some. Thank you, Alex. And we'll take time to stop periodically and make sure that we answer your questions as well.
Yeah. From Tim right now, actually.
Yeah. Is C# primarily a front end or a back end language? So, like we said, C# can be used for everything. It's sometimes called a back end language, though I wouldn't consider it just back end. But it's considered back end because you can't write out what a web page looks like with C#. You need to use something like HTML and CSS. And when it comes to writing, with Xamarin, when you're writing mobile applications, you have to use another markup language like HTML called XAML. So it's primarily back end, but if you're building anything useful, you're going to need a front end and a back end, so C# is still going to play in there.
Yep. Is C# the same as C# from Nadia? Yes. That kind of sounds weird when I'm saying it out loud, realizing it. But yeah, so funny story for those who don't know the origin of the name C#. You may notice if you're familiar with music, it looks like a musical note, and that's because that's where it comes from. So there is the original language C, and if you're familiar with the language C++ and the idea of what means in programming, it means one more than the previous amount, right? So C++ is one version better than the previous C. In music, you have a particular note like C, and then a sharp is one up from C. So similar to C++ being one more than C, C sharp is also one more than C. Mm-hmm. So you can write it as C sharp, but typically you see it with like the actual sharp symbol, which we use the pound sign or hashtag sign. Technically there's a specific symbol for it, but
right.
It's kind of hard to find. So
yeah. And the last thing about languages, Java is very similar. Mm-hmm. When I look at it, they look very same on paper at first.
Yeah.
They are slightly different, and they do have different communities and different frameworks. Mm-hmm. C# is supported by Microsoft, so a lot of all the documentation is supported there, and I personally like it for all of like kind of the tools and frameworks around mm-hmm. it. We could get into like design of the specific language, but starting out, it's not too much different.
Absolutely. And I think another fun background story in C# was that Microsoft basically wanted Java and Oracle was like, no. And so the developers were like, fine, we'll build Java, but better. So that's why there are a lot of similarities between Java and C# because they were designed to do very similar things.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Cool.
Let's hop into it.
So just a quick rundown of how this lesson is going to go. We're first going to run through the project as it exists on the Codecademy website. So again, that's linked below the YouTube video, and if you need to find it. After we go through the version that's on Codecademy and through all of the steps that you see there, we're going to bring in some of the extensions that are actually in the last step. So we'll go over those extensions, and then you'll start to see how we're actually going to bring in conditional statements into this project, because this project is primarily just methods at first. Mm.
So, architect arithmetic. The idea behind this one is that we're given a floor plan, and the example here on the left is the Pantheon of some monument, and we need to calculate the area and then calculate the cost of like flooring that area. If we imagine like the Pantheon, it would be all tile. Mm-hmm. So if we know these like general shapes that looks like there's sort of a square at the bottom and then sort of a circle, we can estimate by breaking those down. And those calculating the area of those things is very easy. Mm-hmm. We could do that for all kinds of different floor plans, and we're going to use C# to automate that process. So we can say we want like one rectangle, one square of this size, and this is what's the area is going to be calculated. So you can see, like, for example, how it's broken down for the Pantheon. Yes, circle and rectangle.
Exactly.
And don't worry if you don't know those area methods. We're going to be giving you those.
Absolutely.
Cool. So let's get started. Mm-hmm. First, we're going to need to define these methods. So I'm going to make this a little bigger for everyone to see.
Okay.
And come over here. Yes. So the first is rectangles. Just area equals length times width. So we want a method that takes in those two values and outputs an area. Mm-hmm. So what I'm going to do in my program.cs, come down here and define a new method.
And we would love to hear from you about how you think you could turn that specific formula into C# syntax as a method. So do you want to start by writing the method signature, and then we can look in the chat and see how you think you could turn area equals length times width into C# syntax for a method. And shout out to Slayer Princess once more. Thank you for repping C# and providing some really great information about why it's such an awesome language to learn first. Really appreciate that. Hello, Foster. Thank you for joining us today. And we know there's a slight delay, so
yeah.
I'm just filling the void in the meantime.
Basically, we're asking, given that formula on the left, area equals length times width, how do we translate that into a method? Mm-hmm. Like, what should I be writing to do that? I'll give people a minute.
Mm-hmm. So, fun fact, I guess. Typically, we do our live streams on Mondays.
Yes.
But we are doing it on a Wednesday because Nick and I are basically ships passing in the middle of the night this week. I just came back from a wonderful vacation, and Nick is about to leave for a equally wonderful vacation.
Yes.
So it's a special Wednesday for us to do a live stream.
Yeah. It's hard to get us in the same room.
Yeah. Pretty soon it's going to be in order.
I know. That's for a while. Yeah.
Not for a while. Okay.
So, as
Awesome.
do, return length times width. Gotcha. Okay, so length times width, would that be a variable defined outside of the method? Would it be arguments to the method? Like, where am I getting those? So I can start with that.
Yeah, let's start on that. So again, when we use the keyword return in a method, we're saying that we are actually returning a value from that method that we can use outside of that method once we initialize it.
Yeah. Just give people a little bit longer to answer that.
So FAJC says, does that mean rectangle returns a double?
Yes.
You are correct in that. As we see in the method signature, we're going to skip the static part for now. Be on the lookout in later lessons to learn about those. But double is the return value. And so we state that in the method signature. Good job.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So Monica is correct. Once we create the method, we can use the value that comes out of it with the return statement when we call the method. So Tetsu says length and width would be arguments. Nadia's response is double rectangle. Rectangle equals length times width. Okay, so it looks like there we're defining specifically a variable named rectangle. That would be a double. Equals length times width.
Yeah. So I'm going to run with Tetsu 2's answer, and we're going to test it out and see how it works.
All right. Thank you all for offering your ideas in the chat. We're going to periodically stop and ask for more of those, so be on the lookout.
Yes. So, yes, and Daniel, you're right. Arguments to the method. So what I have here now is this static double rectangle. So rectangle's method name takes two arguments, which are just the inputs, length and width. And both of those arguments are type double, which means like a decimal number, like 10.5. And then it just returns the product of those two, length times width. So if I went into my main method, I could test this out. Okay, so I'm just writing to the console, and I'm doing rectangle, and let's just come up with some numbers, 30 and 5. So I expect rectangle to take 30 and 5. 30 would be the length, 5 would be the width. Return 30 times 5, which is 150. So let me save that and run that.
I don't know why I was impressed by how fast that was that you calculated that. I was like, whoa! And I was like, that's really not that hard, is it?
I love mental math.
Yes. Nick takes care of all of the math.
So now I'm opening another screen down here. In the projects window, you have all these. The top is the text editor, bottom is a terminal or a console. To run all the code that we're writing, we just do .NET run. So I'm going to press enter here. And then it writes 150 like we expected. So now we know rectangle that method is working like we want it to. And we can call rectangle again and again to calculate all sorts of areas of rectangles.
Awesome. So here we are. We've got our first method working.
Yeah.
Let's keep going.
Okay.
I thought you said length and width were doubles. It's just 30 and 5.
Yes, you are right. Okay, so to further confuse everyone, let's just do this. I'm adding a 0.0 to each of these.
Really make sure we're using that decimal that double gives us.
.NET run. It's the same. So C# is doing two things here. One of them, it's assuming when we say 30 that it's going to interpret it like a double. So like 30 is really 30.0. And then it's multiplying those together and returning 150.00, again, which is a double. And then when it's past the console.write line to write to the console, C# again is saying like, we know you don't need those zeros. We're just going to take them off for you. 150's there. Yeah. So yeah, the whole time it's doubles. C# is just taking care of that for you.
How nice.
I know. Really great. Okay, circles.
Circles.
Right. So now, again, the formula for this one, area equals pi times radius.
Mm-hmm. So now you have a bit of experience with this. Let's see how you think we could create a method for defining the area of a circle.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to open this up again, make this bigger. I'm just going to start off again with this.
Static double, circle.
Why do we use the static keyword?
I tried my hand waviness and being
Yes.
like, ignore the static. But that's fair.
Yeah. So I can explain it to you. You may not be like prepared based on what we've taught so far in C#, which is okay. And in the next set of modules, it's all going to make sense.
Yeah.
But the short answer is that we are running all of this within the program class, and circle is a method of the program class, because you can see where it's like within the class program there. Normally we'd have to create an instance of that class to call any of those methods, because they're instance methods by default. But we want static. We just want to call it just by its name, rectangle. We don't want to say like program.rectangle. So we put that static there that allows us to do that. For now, when we're learning methods, it's just kind of easier to just put everything static, and then you just use the method names. And then we get into more advanced things, you'll see why we would want to do static or not do static.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
So looking for some answers in the chat.
The radius of the circle as argument, and return pi times r times. Okay. Any other ideas? I'm learning things from Slayer Princess right now. This is flavors from both Java and other C languages. Yes, for sure. I agree with all those things.
Yeah.
I guess we should go without do.
All right, we're going to go without do.
Okay, so pi times r squared, which is, yeah, like kind of what the formula looks like. Makes sense. The trick with this is that pi, we have to access, we can't just do 3.14159 because that's not quite pi.
Yeah.
But C# gives us a constant math.pi, which I can just say like math.pi like this. Yes, Monica, right on it.
Yeah.
So that's what we're going to go for. What am I saying? So math.pi times radius.
Yes.
And this looks like we're doing r, I'm going to just spell it out just for clarity, radius. Yeah. And we're doing times. So, yes. So times works in some cases, but it's safer to use math.pow. I forget why at the moment. I think it has to do with backwards compatibility.
Okay.
Oh, you know what? No, I'm thinking of JavaScript.
Oh.
Math.pow. Anyways, let's try
Pow
it.
pow.
Math.pow.
But again, so these are both methods that are part of the math class that you can look up in the Microsoft C# documentation. I believe, are they linked in the hint there? I'm not sure what's.
They might put these links. They're not linked.
Okay, that's fine.
You can look it up.
You can look it up. And so again, we can use math.pi to represent the number pi, and rather than using another form of operators, we can just use math.pow. So how do we use math.pow again?
Right. So math.pow is a method, and we just write. I'm gonna space this out. We're gonna write it just like math.pow we see in the text. Then within there we put radius, because radius is what we want to like square, put to some power. And then a second argument, we need the number of times to multiply it, the exponent.
The power that we're going to raise it to.
We want radius to the power of 2.
Also known as squaring.
Yes.
Math.
Okay. And there it is. Right. We're not going to test this one because we're going to be able to test it in a little bit. So let's move on to triangles.
Cool.
I think for the sake of time, I'm going to write this one out.
Okay,
That's okay.
sure.
Okay. So pretty similarly, area equals half times bottom times height, which is just another formula. So it's going to look pretty similar. Static double triangle. Again, I'm going to need two arguments, the bottom and the height. Everything's a double for now. Okay. Then we're going to return half times bottom times height. Whoa. Let's do that. 0.5 times bottom times height. So now we have our three methods. And now we can test them. Like, because we've written a bunch of code now, we don't want to get lost in bugs later on, so we're just going to try it out.
Exactly. Always good to test your code. And what's great about methods is that they provide a really simple way for quickly testing your code, because you can isolate different aspects of your code and then run them each one at a time with different test cases.
Right. So what we're going to do is just a few test cases. We're going to give each of these methods an input, and we know what the expected output is, so we'll just check that that's logged to the console.
Absolutely.
So I'm going to be doing 3 of these. Whoa.
And yes, Monica, it is really good to know what math class functions you can use. Definitely recommend checking out the documentation again and seeing what sorts of things are available to you. Like square roots, for example, there's no real operator that we can use in our program.
Right.
So while we could simulate raising a number to a certain power, it's much, you can't really do that with a square root. So lots of different functionality.
So, cool. Let's do each of these examples on the left. So it says a rectangle with a length of 4 and a width of 5 has an area of 20, because 4 times 5 is 20. So let's just text, I'm going to say 20 question mark? Actually, I don't think that's 20.
That is nonsense.
Yeah, I know. Okay, fine. Let's just do rect area.
Okay.
Then we'll call that method.
Yes.
Rectangle 4 and 5.
Great.
And then we'll repeat this for the next 2. So double circ area equals circle 4. And we'll try area with a base of 10 and a height of 9. Okay, so we're calling 3 methods, and we have an idea of what those values should be. So let's just print them out and make sure. Should be 20 area. And this one should be 50 for the circle area.
Well, Nick is finishing that up. I saw a question from Nadia who asked if this live stream is being recorded and will it be available in the C# class for viewing. Yes, so all of the live streams are recorded, and there's actually a separate part of the catalog that you can go to that just says live streams on it. Maybe Alex, you could link to that in the chat. And it has all of our past live streams on there, so other C# live streams, but also ones for other domains like R and Java and C++. So you can find them there.
There's also a YouTube playlist. I don't think they can hear me.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, tell them to look at the YouTube playlist too.
There's also a YouTube playlist, so if you subscribe to our Codecademy channel and check out our playlists.
Yeah.
You're
on it. Keep going.
Yeah. You can find more live streams. That was just like the most I've ever come to becoming like a YouTuber, I think, in my entire life.
Subscribe below.
Really easy. That's great.
All right, so we're going to save ourselves from embarrassment.
Yeah, good luck.
It's too late. We're going to test these 3 methods. What I've done is I've called them and then printed out the values. So I'm just going to run the program with .NET Run again. Should be 20, 20. Should be 50, 50.2654881. Should be 45, 45. Okay, so here's a good question. It looks like 20 and 45 are integers with no decimal. And it looks like 50 is a decimal. In C# we call that a double. Why is that? I'm asking all of you. Let me know what you think that reason is.
You know, every time that we ask these questions, the Jeopardy song plays in my head.
Yeah. We should have it.
That would be pretty awesome.
We need our own version.
You should get Ian to do something. Ian's like an electronic experimental musician.
That would be cool. That would be very cool. Okay, right. Let me be more clear. So why does 50.265, this middle value, why does that look different than 20 and 45? I thought rectangle, circle, and triangle all return double values. Yet I'm seeing an int, a double, and an int. Mm-hmm. So what's going on there? Is it because pi is a decimal? That is part of it, mm-hmm. Yes. And double is floating. Yeah, double is a floating point number. I'm not going to sing it.
Did you hear about how this guy had been on a streak on Jeopardy and he was trying to beat the previous person who had these big wins? Yeah. And he got like really close to breaking his record. I think the previous person's record was 5.45 million. Wow. And he was like 5.25 or 26 or something. And this rad 27-year-old librarian,
of course,
beat him.
Wow.
And she wrote her master's thesis on Jeopardy.
Whoa.
And has been like trying to get on Jeopardy for years. And she didn't know because the way they film Jeopardy, they do like multiple shows in a day. So she wasn't super familiar with that this guy was going on a long streak because I guess maybe when she recorded it, it was before all the press had come out. So she didn't realize at first that she was going to be the one who took him down.
Wow.
She's also from outside of Pennsylvania too, or outside of Philadelphia, and I'm like super curious.
Yeah.
Librarian from the Philadelphia area. Awesome. Very proud.
When we talked about Jeopardy, Alex, you couldn't see, but Alex was just like, yeah, I know about that.
Yes.
Okay, so we're getting some answers. Mm-hmm. Could it be because you used a function from math class which returns value with more accuracy?
Oh, that's really interesting.
So like POW function or the other one. Yeah, I can pull that back up. Mm-hmm. Right. So I think you're thinking of math.py or math.pow. Yeah, so you're both onto something with this math and like what it returns, and because pi is a decimal. So like we said before, C# is going to print out any decimal. If it's a decimal a double with just 0.000, it's going to reformat it as an integer, which is why we saw 20 and 45. But with circle, which is that middle one, you're right, math.py is not a 0.00 number. So circle returns something like 50.25, whatever. C# isn't going to reformat that because it knows that those values are important.
Yeah.
So it's not going to cut those off. And so what's happening in the background, they're all doubles. All the methods, math.py, math.pow, double, circle, rectangle, triangle, all return doubles. It's just a matter of how they're formatted in the screen.
Cool. Let's keep going.
Yes. Let's get into actually applying these methods.
Yeah. So I saw someone before mentioned that they started to see how this could all come together. Mentioned something I think about. Monica said for finding surface area, it would just add all three areas. Cool. Yeah.
Yep.
You figured 100%. It out. That's it. So now that we've combined all these shapes together, or now that we've calculated all of these shapes, I should say, now you could combine them together to find the total surface area.
Yeah. So we're going to do the ancient city of Teotihuacan, which is in Mexico City, and it's very big. It kind of looks like this shape that we have on the right here, and we're going to break that down into triangles, circles, and rectangles to use these formulas. So our next question to you, what do you see in this shape? How many triangles, how many rectangles, how many circles do you see in the floor plan on the right?
Exactly. And side note, I'm really excited because I'm going to Mexico City next week. I did just get back from vacation.
Yeah.
Going away again. And hopefully going to see Teotihuacan in person.
Yes, which is very cool.
Yes.
I already told you about the sunscreen and the hats.
Yeah,
and
Nick
water.
went to Mexico City earlier this year, so he's been giving me some tips saying gotta bring plenty of water, sunscreen, because I guess what's a little... So we talked about this as a blueprint. Teotihuacan is technically a city plan, but it's.
I'll take the blame for that one.
It's okay.
Yeah.
And so in our imaginary idea, we are totally, tiling Teotihuacan, which hopefully will never happen. Although we were reading about it on Wikipedia, and apparently they built a Walmart nearby. Were you there for when
I think they had the rights to build a Walmart. I don't know if it happened.
They said that when they were digging stuff up, they found pottery, so I don't know if they stopped development.
Oh.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Any case, yes. So if you also want to throw any Mexico City recs into the chat, I am very willing to hear them. I've literally just been getting recommendations from every single person that I know. I'm only going to be eating tacos and drinking mezcal.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I think that's a great idea.
It's totally fine by me.
Thanks, Monica. Catch us on the video later.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so Tetsuk, one rectangle, one triangle, and half a circle. Yes, that's what I see.
Yeah.
If anyone else has anything else,
I like Faith looking behind me.
Yeah. Let us know if you think that, and we can also try it. Casa Azul. That's the Frida Kahlo thing, right?
Yes, the blue house.
Yes.
Yes, Tim. Hey, Tim. What's up, Tim? I'm actually staying in Coyoacan, which is the neighborhood where the blue house is.
Cool.
So very excited to check that out.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's run with Tetsuk's. If anyone else has different breakdown of this floor plan, let us know. I'd be happy to try it. We're gonna try Tetsuk's. So I'm just gonna get rid of this because we know everything works.
Mm-hmm.
We're gonna say double total area. So the total area of this floor plan is one rectangle plus, what did we say? One triangle plus half a circle. So I'm gonna multiply the circle, the result of the circle method with 0.5. And then I'm just gonna look up, because I already forgot, what the values are. So this rectangle, you can see 2,500 and 1,500. So this and this are the arguments for the first. And then the triangle up on the left is 750 by 500. So 750 by 500. And then the radius of the circle, 375.
There we go.
All right. So let's save that. So now we can calculate the area. If I were to run this code again, hopefully I'll see the value. No, I didn't. Because
you didn't print.
I didn't print anything.
Oh, I wasn't going to say anything. But...
Just going to let me crash on that one also.
Oh, yeah. You got to fix your own bugs sometime, Nick.
Once in a while.
Once in a while.
Okay, so now I'm going to console write it. Wait, what? Oh, I didn't save. Gotta save again. It's better work. Yay! Okay.
Yeah.
So it turns out it's like
412. No.
4
4
million?
million. Yep. 120,893
square meters.
square meters.
Yeah.
Blah, 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 blah.
Cool. So now we've calculated the total area. By the way, if you want to see kind of like what Tetsuk was kind of like breaking down in his head, his or her head, and my head as well, there's a little diagram in the hint. So it's there if you want to look through that. We calculated the area. Now we need to multiply it by the cost of say each square meter of flooring. If we're going to floor the entire city, say each one costs 180 pesos. So all we need to do is multiply the total area by the cost per meter square. So we're going to do that down here. We're going to say, I'm going to store that in total costs. Double total cost equals the total area times 180. And now I'm going to check that. Total cost. Okay. And run it again. Okay. So we don't have commas, but the 4 million square meters, if it's 180 pesos per meter squared, then it costs 748 million pesos.
741 million pesos.
741 pesos.
Yes.
Right. To
742 if you round up.
Yeah. To floor the whole place. Yeah.
And you could do some currency conversion for wherever you live, and
it's big and it costs a lot.
There you go.
Okay. Moving on. There's one last thing with this format. So if I'm a user and I get this information, like again, I'm reading it as 741 million, something. 0.021996 pesos doesn't really make sense. So we want to round that value just to 2 decimals.
Makes
pesos
sense.
are like 0.02. This will probably be. We have another math utility for that called math.round. So we're just going to round. Huh?
I'm laughing at Tim.
Oh. I'm moving on. I'm gonna round the total cost using math.round, and it's just another method, like using methods all day. This is what we're gonna be doing.
Methods on methods on methods.
And we're just gonna pass it total cost.
Yeah.
So up here we're doing math.round and putting total cost in that parentheses. It needs one more argument, which is how far to round it down, I think. Yeah, and you need a 2. So round it down to 2 decimal places. Let's check that worked.
Awesome.
All right.
There we go. It worked. So that completes the first part of the project, which is what exists again here on the Codecademy site. We'll pause for a second, see if anyone has any questions, and then after we answer your questions, we're going to move on to some of the extensions that, again, are in the last exercise below. Yeah. So feel free to put any questions into the chat, and we'll take some time to answer them.
Yeah. I've seen a few things about audio. We'll remember to speak up, and if there's still issues, try to refresh the page. Yes, we'll try to do that.
Yep. And again, we super appreciate each of you not only talking to us in the chat, but talking to each other in the chat. It's really great to see people go in there and answer each other's questions and celebrate and support one another. That's a huge part of the learning journey. It's not simply about the teachers and the students, but it's also working together with each other.
Yeah, absolutely.
Talk about the CLL.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, great plug time for our communities. On that note, thank you, Alex. So Codecademy, in addition to having a great, wonderful learning platform, also has some really amazing communities. We have our forums, which are on platform, and everyone can take part in the forums and ask questions and answer questions, look for support there. We also have a Facebook channel that is, again, open to everyone, so you can find our Facebook community group. And then we also have our community, Codecademy Lifelong Learners Slack channel, which is available to our pro users, and it's full of discussions about people looking for jobs, looking for help on coding questions. We do weekly chats that are all Slack-based chats, so kind of similar to what you're doing right now on YouTube. We also offer free first previews of our content in like a beta capacity, so people can give feedback. Lots of different ways to engage with the Codecademy community, so we hope that you join us on some of them.
Mm-hmm. Let's see if we have any other questions we missed.
Thanks, Joel, for the vote of support. We appreciate it. Cool. Lauren's here. Awesome. So what are the basics for this? If it's the basics for this project, we'd recommend going through the first 4 modules of C#, which are currently on the catalog now. So that will give you an introduction to C#, working with different data types and variables, along with now conditionals and methods.
Mm-hmm. I think we're ready to move on to the additional part.
I think so. Thanks, Abdu. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us today and appreciating it. Okay, so we're now going to move into the extensions. So if we scroll down. I swear to God, one of these days I'll get used to moving between laptops. You can see that in our step 10 that we have extra challenge extensions. So the first one of these is to make the entire program a method so that you can execute it in your main method with one line, such as calling it as calculate total cost.
Which is one we're going to skip.
We're going to So ignore that one. You can do that one on your own.
Yes, that one's all for
That's
you.
all for you. What we are going to do is determine the total cost for, two other blueprints that you can see right here. So the Taj Mahal and the Great Mosque of Mecca. So similar to Teotihuacan, we have provided you with blueprints and the measurements for different parts of the building, which you can then use in your formulas. So what we're going to do now is we are going to also calculate the total costs for these two other buildings. And then we are going to show you how to refactor this code and also how to make it interactive so another user could run it from their console.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
Okay, so for the sake of time, I'm just going to pump out the two more areas.
All right.
Just to calculate those.
Pump them out.
Yeah, see how I can do this.
So one quick way of doing it is we could just copy them, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Cool.
So I'll do this, and I don't need the total area here. Yes, here we go. And copy this. Paste it here. Paste it here. Now I have three versions. I'm going to call this total area TM. TM. So I'm just making these new variable names. So for TM, the Taj Mahal is, if I look at this, it's one rectangle with little triangles cut out in the corners. So I'm going to say, I'm going to delete all of this here. So the Taj Mahal is really a rectangle of 90.5 by 90.5 minus four little triangles, so 4 times triangle, and it's 24 by 24.
There we go.
Okay. So then multiply by 180, round it, cool. Next, Great Mosque of Mecca. So I'm going to make these new variable names, GMM, 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 GMM. Okay. This next one looks to me like, let me pull this out, like a rectangle on top and then a bigger rectangle below it with a triangle cut out.
Okay.
Okay. So first rectangle is 180 by 106. The next one is a rectangle of 284 by 264 minus that little triangle over there, and that is 264 by 84. 264 by 84. Okay. Save that. Put these out. All right.
Okay, there we go.
So now we have our values. And those are the costs for Teotihuacan, Taj Mahal, and Great Mosque of Mecca. Right now we're doing this all in the main method. I'm going to pull that up so you can see it. All in here. And it looks a little repetitive.
It's looking a lot repetitive.
Yeah.
Just a lot of the same. I mean, granted, it's because we copied it, but but yeah, I think there's probably a way that we can reduce the amount of repetition that we have right now.
Yes. Anytime I see repetition, it just screams to me either loops or methods. Loops we're not going to cover right now because we haven't covered that in the courses yet.
No, but we are working on it.
But it will come out soon.
Yes.
This one's a good case for methods, which means we can bunch all of this code that's duplicated, throw it in a method, and then just call that method multiple times.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Does anyone have an idea of what we should take out and put into a method? So given these 9 lines of code, which ones should we adapt to a method? And which should we leave in main? let us know. I think you're making friends with Joel, Alex.
Do you guys know customer support email?
What is
It's-
a customer support email?
You can go to the help center. I'm blanking on the URL, but yeah,
It's help.codecademy.com.
yes. And then you can ask a question there, where you can. It's like basically like sending us an email.
Yeah.
Found that?
What's that?
You're able to find help.
Yeah.
Help.codecademy.com. Slayer Princess, total area could be a method, and total cost could be a method, perhaps. Yeah? That makes sense.
Sounds good to me.
So total area would be, you'd put in, I guess, I don't know what the input would be, but it would be output the total area of one floor plan, I think. And same with total cost. I guess total cost, the input would be area and the output would be cost. Anyone else want to add to that? I'll explain maybe a different option. Right. So right now in main, to answer Mayo's question, in main there's 9 lines, 3 for each floor plan, because we're calculating the area of 3 floor plans. The code looks very repetitive. So you can see that like in the second line, double total cost equals total area. For example, that's everywhere. In this one, in this one, in this one. So one way that we could change that is pull that into a method and create a method that takes in area and returns cost, and then just call that method 3 times. We could do something similar with area that would be a little trickier that we're going to focus on now. You could also put calculating total cost and printing out in a method together. Yes. Right. So again, console without right line is another line that's being kind of duplicated. And I was tempted to do that too when I first designed this project. Zoe and I were talking about this a little earlier. We actually prefer to keep all of the console.write line, all of the console methods in main.
Yeah.
And that's kind of a separation of concerns. Right.
So that way that you're only returning values from your method, so you could console write line those values, or you could save them to a variable and use them in some other way. But if you put the console.write line into the actual method itself, then that's the only thing that method will be able to do.
Yes. If you think about it, like if something were to go wrong in printing things to the console, you only want to look at one method that's dealing with all of the console stuff, rather than having to search through all your methods, which is why we like to keep it all in one place. And that's like the concern.
Totally. I was going to do a little time out for a second. I don't know if you wanted to do this part first. Because then that might make sense for the refactoring. But if you want to do the refactoring first and then go into the interactive.
I see. Okay. So you're saying like instead of doing this, doing it all up there first, like doing this part up there? Yeah.
And then refactoring it into methods?
Okay.
I think that might make more sense unless we'd have to then adjust what would happen in that particular method.
Right.
But
I think you're right. You're right.
Okay.
So we're going to go through with something similar to what Slayer Princess is describing, like separating the total area calculation out and total cost calculation out. And we'll do that after we do some little interactive like behavior with this app. Essentially, we want to be able to type in Taj Mahal and it'll calculate Taj Mahal.
Exactly. So like we mentioned sort of very, very early on, typically when you're writing a program, it's not necessarily for just yourself to run, but also for another user to run. So what we want to do with this program is package it in a way that there's an actual user experience, so that if someone were to type .run into the console, instead of just giving a value with no context, it would actually ask you, hey, which building of these 3 buildings do you want the total area and cost of flooring for? and then your user can choose, and then the program will output an answer.
Mm-hmm.
User interaction.
Yes.
So if we want to make this program interactive, what are we going to need to add to our program to both ask the user for a value and then determine what that answer is, what that value is, and give them the appropriate output? Yeah. So that's a question to y'all. If you could write in the chat, what are some of the things that we may need to add to our program in order to make it interactive for another user to experience?
Yes. Junie said read line. Definitely.
Yes. So again, as a little refresher, we have seen console.writeLine, but we can use console.readLine to read in information that someone types to the console. So whatever they type in and then press enter. So that's great. Which, yes, FFJC, that's going to ask the user for input. So what we could do is even before our read line, we could put another write line that says, hello, welcome to our area calculator program. Which it's my computer voice. What do you want? Which area would you like to calculate today? Or which building would you like to calculate the area for today? And then we can list them out.
And then, like Junie said, then we're going to read line. Mm-hmm. We're going to capture that information. But then what?
So how is basically what Nick's asking is, how is our program going to respond? How is it going to know if Nick types in, oh, I want the area for Taj Mahal? Right now we just have 3 different ways that we're, calculating area. How does it know how to choose which one of these outputs to put out? Because we don't want to print out all 3 of them. How do we select just one of these outputs? So Junie is saying that we're storing it as a variable. So yes, we're going to want to somehow capture what our user response is and in a variable-esque format. So Tetsu says a method per shape. So we do have methods already for calculating each shape. FA asked, what if the user types a string? So actually, everything that gets returned from a console read line is technically a string. If you look at some of our earlier lessons, we talk about if you need an integer output from a read line, how to convert that. But we're, I think, going to ask them to type out a string anyways.
Yeah, and Tetsuk too, I think when you said method per shape, we already have methods for rectangle, triangle, and circle. Mm-hmm. You might be talking about like a method per floor plan, which is also something we could do, which could help. But again, it doesn't solve the problem of choosing one.
Yeah. So how do programs make decisions? The delay is too funny.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Here we go. So we had Junie write a if statement and Slayer Princess write an if else loop. So we're starting to talk about conditional statements, and you got it, guys. That's exactly what we're looking for. So we do want to use some type of conditional statement to help our program decide what output there should be. So if statements are one option, using if, else, if, but we really have kind of 4 choices that we're looking at right now, right? So we have 3 buildings, so they can choose between one of those buildings, but we also want an option in case whatever response we get from the user doesn't make any sense, right? We want to start thinking about the user experience. We want the program to continue even if they don't have, a correct answer. So Junie says switch case default.
Yeah.
That's exactly what we were thinking, because once you start getting beyond 3 options in terms of making a decision, writing those if, else if, blah, blah, blah statements starts to get just too verbose, and there's a lot of room for potential error. Whereas a switch case is really nice, particularly in this case, because we don't need any logic, right? We're not checking a specific condition necessarily. We just want to know one answer, and that's our case, and then we switch on different cases.
Yeah. So, right. Junie S and Slayer Princess, both of those work. If and if else loops, and switch case. Those work.
Yeah.
We're going to prefer switch, and we can talk about that once we type it out. I think would make more sense.
Yeah, sure.
So why don't we go ahead with that?
Let's do it.
Yes. So above this, I'm going to say, we're going to, like we said, ask for user input, console.writeLine. Which monument would you like to work with? Would you like to work with? Okay. And then we're gonna end that, and then we're gonna capture the input, whatever they say, using a console.readLine.
Yep. So thanks to the folks who said console.readLine.
Someone also said store it. Junie said store it as a variable. So it'll be a string, like we talked about. So string, let's call it choice. Okay. And then somehow we do an if, a switch on that choice. Okay, so I'm imagining that what they're going to put in is Teotihuacan, Taj Mahal, or Great Mosque of Mecca. Those are like the three choices. We could do an if else. So if choice equals this, then do that. Else if choice equals this, do that. Because it's not really like a condition, it's just a value. It just depends on the different values. Switch is a little easier to read for that kind of like statement.
Absolutely.
So let me show you what that looks like. So switch statement uses that switch with on choice. And then in here we're gonna put our different cases. Case 1, if choice equals Teotihuacan, then we're going to do some stuff. And what we're going to do is calculate total area.
Yep.
Let me copy this. And let's just use that for now.
Okay.
And then break, because we want to end that case. Then we'll do it 2 more times. So case for Taj Mahal.
While Nick is writing out our switch statements, Alex wrote this in the chat, but another good use of if statements would be to check to make sure that shapes aren't negative numbers. So if, for example, we were, again, asking for user input and, making sure that we can validate whatever our values are going to be, that's a really good use of if-else statements. Conditional statements in general.
Okay. And then we need a default, because there's a chance that the user doesn't pick any one of these 3 choices. So let's just say that the area equals 0. Okay. So I need to change up my code a little bit now that we've put it all together in a switch statement. We want to go back from a 3 variable kind of world to a single variable kind of world, because we're only doing one at a time. Yeah. So I'm going to define what I need here, which is a double total area, and then just set it equal in all of these cases.
There we go.
So instead of defining like a new TM for each.
Again, already starting to refactor our code. Take out that G.
Yes. Okay. And I can get rid of most of this. Let's do just all of that.
Feels so good. Just deleting.
All that code.
Goodbye.
Okay, so let's read through what we have here. Which monument would you like to work with? Ask the user. Then we capture the choice. Then we define a double, which is a total area. And then depending on the choice, we set total area to a different value.
Yep.
Yeah, if none of them are right, then it's 0. And then we calculate the cost and print out the cost. So let's run it now, see how we're doing.
Let's see how we're doing. Let's take a little pit stop. Again, if you have any questions, great time to ask them in the chat.
Yes, so JTV, that is a good question. It's always good when you're designing these programs to think about what could go wrong and think about the user.
Exactly. Different edge cases. So we can't always assume that a user is going to type it in the exact way
Yes.
that we expect them to.
Yeah. We love our users, but sometimes they make mistakes.
User error is a real thing.
So we got to prepare for all of those. Lowercase is, yes, a big one. Right now, there's another issue that I'm running into. This question, which one would you like to work with? I don't know what my options are.
Yeah.
If I'm a user and I didn't build this program, how am I supposed
say
to know?
Eiffel Tower.
Yeah. And then what happens there? You get 0. That's not helpful. So let's explain the options to them.
Yeah, I think so. So what we can do is that in our original console.writeLine statement, we can actually tell them what their options are so they know what to choose.
Teotihuacan.
Because also, I don't know if I could spell Teotihuacan without actually seeing it in front of me. I'm very impressed that Nick has gotten very good at it.
Gotten a lot of practice.
I'm also just terrible at spelling too.
Okay, so now we have those options.
Great.
And if I were to do the right one, like Teotihuacan, I would get the value.
Hey.
Yes. So that code in the switch statement is being evaluated. Just this first one, because it's just that one case. Okay. Lowercase?
Lowercase.
Yeah. So now we're saying if it was lowercase t, Teotihuacan, obviously that wouldn't match any of the cases.
Yeah.
Because none of those exist here.
Computers are extremely literal, and while we would be able to tell the difference between Teotihuacan in title case or uppercase or lowercase, a computer wouldn't be able to. So I think what's always good to do is just take whatever it is and then change it to the case that we want to check on.
Yes. And we can do that with a method to lower. And that's just a string method. So choice is a string.
Yep.
We can use that method. So in here, instead of passing switch choice, I want to pass it choice.toLower.
Yeah.
So if I had said like Taj Mahal capital case, it would send Taj Mahal lowercase.
Yeah. But you don't want the semicolon.
I think I do. Oh, so semicolon. You're right. I thought you were going to say parentheses. I'm like, I know. I'm sorry. And then now we're matching on lowercase. So I'm going to make all these lowercase.
Yeah.
Great. Mosque. Mecca.
You could also do, again, the opposite. You could switch everything to uppercase, let's say.
Run this one more time. .NET run. And yeah, let's try to break it. Lowercase Taj Mahal. Still works.
Can't break me.
Unbreakable.
Unbreakable.
What about like weird punctuation? Like every other one is capitalized. Will that work?
Let's try it.
Ooh. What do they call that again?
Random.
Is that one
Random
that
case.
So
It's random case.
you're saying like Alex is suggesting try to do like Taj.
Like we're back in middle school.
Mahal. Right?
Yes.
Which I guess is technically Taj Mahal.
Yeah.
It works.
Bam.
Yes.
Did it. Cool. Great. Don't see any other questions. So I think let's return to our previous conversation about refactoring using methods.
Yes. And we're a little low on time. So I think maybe we should talk about it. We won't actually run through it, but we'll talk about it a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah. So, right. We've done a lot so far.
We have done a lot so far. We got to the conditionals.
Yes, which was important.
Which was important.
We defined 3 methods to calculate rectangle, circle, and triangle. So we learned how to do some basic methods. We talked about returning to double. We technically talked about static, but we're ignoring that for now. We used math.py and math.pow. And then in main, we asked for user input with readline or with write line. We captured it with readline, and then used a switch statement to do different things depending on user input.
And we considered some edge cases for what user input could be and took care of that with toLower as a method.
Yes. And this next part that we're not going to do, but we're going to talk about is refactoring this into a method. So instead of putting all this code in main, we can break some of it out into a method so that we can easily test it and keep it separate if anything were to go wrong. And so I guess the question is, what is the input and output of this method? If it's going to be a method, obviously we want to get the total area out. So this method is going to return area, but it's going to take in what? Should be the choice.
Should be the choice.
Right. So this method will take in a string that says Teotihuacan, Taj Mahal, Great Mosque, Mecca, and then return a number that equals the area of that place.
So it would be returning a double
Yes.
again.
And what it would look like, sort of, is kind of wrapping this switch in a method, and then just calling that method from main. So I think we're going to leave that up to you to try.
So another good extension.
Yes, another
What
good
you know.
extension. If you come up with some cool ideas on how to do that, making this more interactive, handling different edge cases, maybe being more clear with what all this output means, maybe selecting a different, what is it called? Pesos? Like
Currency, different
Thank
currency.
You. Thank you.
Yeah.
All those things you can do now with what we talked about.
Absolutely. We even said it could be really interesting if you could figure out a way of doing it where you could like ask for shapes and calculate a floor plan based off of what shapes there are in it. So you're not limited to just these ones. But you've got a lot of things at your disposal now, and we're really excited to see the other things that you build.
Yeah, if you want to, at Codecademy on Twitter, we'll see those there. Yeah, and then in Facebook and CLL, you can send those there if you want to share some stuff. And if you have questions or ever get stuck, those are great places to go as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think we have a live stream planned for next week. I think the R folks are going to do one on Monday, if you want to plug that.
Yeah, so sounds like we're getting back into the jive of live stream. So our folks from R, Ian and Natalia, are going to be doing a live stream next week on Monday at 1:30. So you should definitely check that out. Our content is awesome.
Yeah. And we really appreciate everyone that's been working with us. It's super rewarding for us to like start to teach the content that we have just been writing at our desks for a while.
Yeah,
it's really fun.
It's really fun. We talk about this sometimes, but like a lot of us are former teachers or have been in the classroom before, and we really love the opportunity to put our content in front of y'all and interact with you and see how brilliant you are and have you answer our questions. So thank you for joining us today on a live stream. We can't wait to see you again. Be on the lookout in a couple of months for even more C# content. We're starting to get into some more intermediate concepts like classes and objects. And of course, we're still got to cover arrays and loops, so don't worry about those. They'll be coming your way soon as well. Any last questions? I think our friend Alex Kuntz can answer some of the ones that are in there now, but otherwise, yeah.
Thanks.
That's it. Thank you so much. And again, live stream is going to be recorded and up on YouTube for you to watch later in case you missed any of it.
And if you have any good feedback or bad feedback, we'll take
any
it.
feedback. We love feedback. We'll take all the feedback.
Alex posted in the chat from Codecademy. You'll see a chat with a link to that doc.
Exactly. All right.
Okay.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks.